Hi, everybody. I'm Sophia, and today we're now going to be talking about how to answer the counterplan when you are affirmative. So let's first just take a quick step back and quickly review the counterplan. I know that sometimes the counterplan can get a little bit complicated, but keep in mind that it's a negative argument, but it's a different kind. And so we're not defending the status quo. When you're negative, you're actually going to make your own plan to test against the affirmative's plan. So let's look into how we answer that. And so the ADL has come up with this great acronym that's STOP. So you can think of it like STOP the counterplan. So STOP here, you can see it stands for solvency deficit, theory, offense, and lastly, permutation. So let's go into each of those. So the first one is solvency deficit, and this is what it sounds like. It's kind of like when you're answering the disadvantage, you want to talk about how the counterplan does not solve, and not only does the counterplan not solve, but your plan as the affirmative actually solves even better. And just keep in mind that those advantages of the affirmative are actually disadvantages to the counterplan, since you're saying that the counterplan is not able to solve for them. So the next one we have theory, and this is just talking about how when you're affirmative, that other negative team reading the counterplan is actually unfair to debate, and it's unfair to the affirmative. So therefore, in whole, we should reject this counterplan. All right, so next we want to go to offense. So even though the counterplan is a negative argument, there's some great ways that you can turn it around and actually make it your offense in the debate. So of course, we want to be able to prove that the counterplan is a bad idea and that your judge should prefer to vote for the plan. That's something really cool that you can do, just like how when you turn a disad is when you can turn the counterplan. And so when you turn a counterplan, you're going to say, not only does the counterplan not solve for the impacts that the affirmative's advantages talk about, if anything, the counterplan actually causes those impacts and it even makes that situation worse. And then you also, another way that you can turn the counterplan into your own offense is saying that the counterplan links to the net benefit, which is one of the disadvantages that they're reading. So keep in mind when you talk about that disadvantage as the net benefit, you also want to explain that your plan avoids the net benefit while it does link to the counter plan. All right, so the last part of the acronym we have here is the permutation. And a permutation is what it sounds like. It means we're going to have some sort of way where we're going to incorporate both. So when you are debating a counterplan, the neg is going to say that there's mutual exclusivity. And that basically means they're saying we can only do the counterplan or only do the plan. Of course, they're going to argue for only doing the counterplan, but when you're affirmative, you're going to say that there's no mutual exclusivity. And there's two main types of permutations we can do. So in debate, we actually shorten the word permutation just to perm because it's shorter, and in debate, we love to be concise. So the first one you can do is perm do both. And so a great question to ask yourself when you're affirmative is how does doing the perm, so doing the plan and the counter plan, avoid linking to that net benefit, which is the disadvantage that we talked about earlier. And then the other type of permutation that you can do, which is a little bit more complicated, is you can say perm do the counter plan. And when you're affirmative, you want to make sure to really ask yourself and outline the differences between what the affirmative plan does and what the counter plan is doing, while also making sure that you're not linking to the disadvantage. So we're going to take the example that we did last time. If you've already watched the running a counterplan video that we have on the website. So let's just review it really quickly. So the plan is that Sophia's hungry and she wants to go to Chick-fil-A. But in the counter plan, the neg is going to read that Sophia should actually go to Chipotle. And so in this case, we're reading the guacamole disadvantage, that serving is our net benefit because Chick-fil-A does not have guacamole. But if we're affirmative, we're going to answer this counter plan using that acronym that we talked about earlier. So let's look at the first one, S, which is solvency deficit. We're just going to say that Chipotle doesn't give you enough meat. So it's not going to solve for our hunger advantage in this like makeshift debate because they don't give enough meat in their meal. All right, so let's move on to T, which is theory. And we're just going to say that reading a counterplan as negative is unfair because it just assumes that I can go to both places. And you can't always make those kinds of assumptions. So now we move on to offense, and we're going to say, we're going to move to offense, and we're going to say, actually, Chipotle would make Sophia sick. Maybe their meat has like some bacterial growth in it, and it's going to make her not feel so good. And then finally, another way that we're going to answer this counterplan is saying permutation. And in this case, we're going to go with perm do both. So I can actually go get fries from Chick-fil-A and also get like a bowl or a burrito from Chipotle. And doing this perm is going to still solve the hunger advantage because I'm going to be full and it's going to prevent me from getting any hungrier. All right, so ultimately, the most important thing when you are answering a counterplan is that you want to be clear. And clarity is king is often a phrase that you hear get brought up so much, but it's so true. A lot of times when you are reading a counterplan, answering the counterplan, things can get a little bit muddled and a little bit confusing, especially for your judge. So just keep in mind to really watch your judge. Maybe if they make a confused face, that's a great time for you to go back and re-explain exactly what you were talking about. I like to tell people oftentimes it's a great opportunity to tell a story and be super clear, and then answering the counterplan will go great.